So here's the thing about Shrek 5 that nobody is really talking about clearly. The script that's currently being animated is not the script that was originally in production, and the reason it changed has everything to do with leaks, fan backlash, and what sounds like a studio that made a course correction mid-development rather than risk another forever after situation. That alone makes this one of the more interesting production stories in recent animated film history. And we haven't even gotten to the actual movie yet. Let's go back to early 2025. For a while, the only confirmed piece of information about Shrek 5 was that the original trio was returning: Mike Myers, Eddie Murphy, Cameron Diaz, all confirmed. Then word starts circulating online that Zendaya had joined the cast, and instead of letting that leak spread on its own terms, DreamWorks dropped a proof of concept teaser almost immediately to get ahead of it. That teaser confirmed Zendaya as Felicia, the daughter of Shrek and Fiona, who we last saw as a newborn at the end of Shrek the Third. And that teaser kicked off two completely separate controversies at once, which is genuinely impressive. The first controversy was the animation, the second was the plot, and together they produced the kind of online reaction that visibly moved the needle on the production itself. Let's talk about the leaked plot first, because it's the part that actually caused DreamWorks to go back and rewrite the script, according to My Time to Shine Hello on X, an account with a mixed track record but one that had correctly called Zendaya's casting before the teaser dropped. The original version of Shrek 5 began immediately after the events of the first film. Lord Farquaad, having been swallowed by the dragon at the end of Shrek 1, apparently discovers a magical stone inside her stomach right before he gets fully digested. He touches it, gets transported to the real world, survives there for years, and eventually builds himself a Shrek-themed park in the style of Universal Studios. A man who tried to build a perfect kingdom by purging it of fairy tale creatures ends up in a world where he is completely anonymous, except for his connection to the very ogre who ruined his plans. That detail is genuinely funny, and also a little dark if you think about it for more than 5 seconds. Meanwhile, in Far Far Away, Felicia is older now, clearly ambitious, and wants to prove herself as a magic user. She's been practicing spells, she wants to impress Shrek, and Shrek keeps brushing her off, so she tries something new, something above her skill level, and she accidentally sends herself, Shrek, and Donkey straight into the real world. They can't get back because she doesn't know how to reverse the spell. They stumble across Farquaad, learn about the magical object that transported him there years ago, and realize that might be their only way home. That's the original version. And when details about this started circulating, the reaction from fans was noticeably negative. The Shrek franchise has always played with meta humor and pop culture references, but keeping it inside the fairy tale world is what made the joke work. Bringing the characters into our world directly felt like it collapsed the distance that made the satire function. It sounded less like Shrek and more like a movie about Shrek being a meme, which is a very different thing. DreamWorks apparently heard that reaction and rewrote the script. The version currently in production reportedly keeps the interdimensional travel concept, but the heroes no longer land in a one-to-one recreation of the real world. The destination is different, though some real-world elements are reportedly preserved. The Farquaad arc is also said to still be part of the story in some form, and the core mechanic of Felicia accidentally triggering the whole mess seems intact. This rewrite is almost certainly a major reason for the film's release date being moved twice. The film was originally announced for July 2026. It got pushed to December, presumably to land on DreamWorks' 25th anniversary window, and then it moved again to June 2027. No official explanation was given for that second delay, but when a studio rewrites a script mid-production, something has to give in the schedule. That's just how it works. Now back to that teaser, because the animation backlash is a whole separate conversation. The footage showed updated versions of Shrek, Fiona, Donkey, and Felicia standing around the magic mirror, and the visual style had clearly changed. The characters looked smoother, more detailed in terms of texture and lighting, more technically sophisticated by every measurable standard, and a lot of people hated it. The comparison that kept coming up online was the Sonic the Hedgehog trailer from 2019, which is an extremely specific reference that means something very particular in fan culture. When Sonic dropped that first trailer, the design was wrong enough that Paramount actually pulled it, spent months redesigning the character, and the finished film ended up doing well partly because fans respected that the studio listened. DreamWorks is in a similar position now, and the extra year of production time could plausibly be used, at least in part, to assess whether the visual direction is working. The thing is, the original Shrek films had a specific aesthetic that was intentionally a little rough, a little grotesque, deliberately unpolished in places. Shrek Shrek was not meant to look beautiful. That was the entire point. The fairy tale world was satirizing beauty standards and conventional hero archetypes, and the characters themselves were visual manifestations of that satire. What the teaser showed looked closer to something like a modern Illumination production, which makes a certain sense given that Chris Meledandri, the CEO of Illumination, is serving as executive producer on Shrek 5. That's not an accusation, just an observation about who is shaping the film's identity at the production level. Meledandri has been overseeing this project since 2018, and the fingerprints are there. Whether that influences the final look of the film is the real question. What's worth noting on the animation front is that the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade in November showed a float with updated versions of the character designs, and fans who saw those said the designs had been tweaked from what appeared in the teaser. That's not confirmation of a full redesign, but it's not nothing either. On cast, the full picture has filled in significantly since the teaser. Myers, Murphy, and Diaz returning is already a minor miracle. Diaz had been out of acting for years, and coming back for this specifically says something about how the project was pitched to her. Zendaya as Felicia was the big surprise casting that nobody had on their radar at all. And then DreamWorks announced that Marcelo Hernandez and Skylar Gisondo would voice Fergus and Farkle, the twin sons. Antonio Banderas has not been officially confirmed for this film, which is conspicuous given that The Last Wish ended with Puss, Kitty Softpaws, and Perito on their way to Far, Far Away. That ending was structured as a handoff back to the main franchise. If Shrek 5 doesn't include Puss at all, that's a creative choice. But if the film is busy enough with 3 kids, a dimension-hopping plot, Farquaad, and whatever villain is driving the story, maybe keeping Puss to the sidelines makes structural sense. His standalone spin-off raised the expectations for his character so high that giving him a glorified cameo might be worse than keeping him out entirely. There's also a piece of franchise history worth mentioning because it reframes what Shrek 5 was always supposed to be. Back in 2004, Jeffrey Katzenberg said publicly that the Shrek story had been planned as 5 films almost from the beginning, and that each entry would answer questions left open by the first movie. He specifically said the 5th chapter would finally explain how Shrek ended up alone in that swamp at the start of film 1. That's a 20-year-old promise that is now theoretically being cashed in. We might actually find out what happened to Shrek's family, why he was isolated, and what the world of ogres looked like before it was reduced to essentially one guy who wants everyone off his land. Forever, After gave us a glimpse of an alternate timeline where ogres existed as a group with a whole resistance movement, and then that timeline reset and they were just gone again. If Shrek 5 commits to exploring that mythology, it could land as something with actual weight behind it, not just a nostalgia delivery mechanism. The rumored involvement of Shrek's parents as characters is interesting in that context. And then there's Felicia, who is the new element that could either make or break the whole film depending on execution. Based on everything that's been described, she's impulsive, magically gifted, and trying to prove herself to a father who isn't paying enough attention. That is a genuinely usable character dynamic, and Zendaya has the range to sell the comedic and emotional beats if the script gives her real material. The most interesting structural possibility is that you have 3 generations of the same family all processing the same core identity question in completely different ways. Shrek caught between his roots and the life he built, his parents unable to reconcile who he's become, and Felicia growing up in a world that already accepts her, figuring out who she is when external acceptance isn't the struggle. That's a layered setup if the film actually commits to it instead of using the family dynamic as background texture for an action plot.